the Growler with PD and J. Here to analyze for you today. From Growler bed to Jay's got stats. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Growler Podcast.
All right, welcome to the latest edition of PD and J. Pauliner Jr., Jay Morrison. Happy to be with you on a Wednesday. How are we doing, Jay?
I'm doing great. I have a little bit of news. I have a new title that I get to add here very shortly, which is father-in-law. My daughter Veda got engaged on Friday to her girlfriend Bethany. So we are very happy, very excited. I think it's going to be a short engagement. I think the wedding's going to happen pretty soon. So looking forward to all of that comes with that.
The wedding's happening soon. This is a lot for you to prepare for. They can't just put you on the spot like this.
They actually just want to go to the courthouse and get it done. We're like, no. We got at least like a tent in our backyard or something. They are ready to go right now. So there's not going to be a big ceremony. Not a lot to plan. Not a lot coming out of my wallet, which I do like. So yeah, but it is. It's been a good time in our household.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations to Veda. I will say this, you're still going to have to give a speech. I want you to stand up at the courthouse and give a welcome speech to everybody. If that's where you do it or wherever they go, wherever you've got to still have a big, long speech and make it as long as you possibly can. That's what
one speech at a time. One speech at a time, because my mom's celebration of life is Friday night, and I'm working on that speech right now. So get through that, and then I'll go on to the
we'll get to the next speech. One.
Yes.
A lot going on. Congratulations, CJ. We've got a lot to get to today on the Growler. We need to talk about the latest with Trey Hendrickson. We need to talk about some of the free agent rumblings of what's left to happen or will not happen with the Bengals going forward. Our guest today in the middle is going to be Mike Ginnitti. He runs a site you're probably very familiar with lately, of Spotrac, and puts all that together. He's going to take the Jamar and Tee and Trey Hendrickson contract situation and try to get it layman's terms here. We're going to try to help explain it to you a little bit better without getting too deep in the weeds. He does an excellent job of that. That is coming up later on in the show. We're going to get the Growler bracket update. We expanded to almost 1,000 teams ended up in this thing.
Yeah.
And we've got extra graders shippers are getting sent out. The 6-pack shippers are not just one, it's going to be 2 now. The Growl Gals are throwing in some stuff. Cincy Shirts, I think, is going to throw in some stuff. We're just adding on. People want a piece. They saw the excitement that you all had about the bracket challenge. Now everybody's in and wants a piece. So we're going to get into that. Jay's got stats. We're going to talk about the mock draft. We're going to do a little mock draft broad brushing. Steve came on Monday. I hope you listened to Monday's show. Steve Palazzolo was excellent, bridging the gap of the Bengals free agency and the draft in the big picture of their team build. Of course, he is just awesome. You should be listening to Check the Mic over at 33rd Team. He does with Sam Monson. But we did that. We're going to take a little bit of a broad view of sort of the big board of the first round mock draft, where they're going and how we kind of are viewing that. Jay's got stats. We've got ARBIES. You know how it all goes here. But Jay, you know what? It's opening day week.
It is
here. And in Cincinnati, that's basically a holiday. And at the Growler, it's a special day. We have heard you. Okay. And you guys, we get these emails all the time. You guys should have some kind. You should do a Reds podcast. I'm kind of like wink, wink, nod, nod. I'd love to, but you don't want to dip your toe into the space. You want to show up with a splash, and you just got to have the right. You got to feel like you have the right people to do it. And then something special happened. Our good friend Charlie Goldsmith, who you all know very well, and Reds Live host Brian Giesenschlag were on board with doing it. And they have taken it and run with it. And let me tell you, folks, this show is going to be awesome. It is the insight that you get from Brian and Charlie being, the relationships they have. They're in the building. Brian's been around doing this forever. He's an absolute pros pro. He's so good. Charlie, you guys know the insight you get from Charlie. And people don't realize this. They're like really good friends. I didn't know that until we sort of started talking about this. And this all came together very quickly. And so it's a chance to be sort of the first expansion of the Growler Podcast Network. I'm happy to use the word network because we're expanding, we're growing, and you guys, that listen to us and that follow along with us have allowed us to bring more stuff like this to you, and we want to keep doing it. But I can't think of a better place to start than with Charlie and with Brian and Power Stacks podcast, which is just awesome. There's an episode up now. You can, if you probably saw it in the feed that we had, the trailer is up there. You can go, make sure you subscribe. It's everywhere you get your podcast, the YouTube page, Power Stacks on YouTube. Subscribe, get the notifications, follow all things that you've done to help us grow, do for them, because it's going to be well worthwhile. They're going to publish every Monday morning. So you'll wake up to get your Reds week started with all the insight. They're going to hold stuff back that you not have known or not have seen. Lots of insight from the clubhouse, from the field, all the stuff that they have. So it is going to be awesome. I'm just stoked. I'm stoked that they wanted to do it because they're going to be awesome.
I love Power Stacks. I love the name, and I was kind of not a fly on the wall, but I was in there when you and Charlie were discussing what you guys were going to call this podcast. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but there were some really interesting names. Can you say what maybe the runner up was, or do you not want to mention that? I love Power Stacks because I heard some of the other ones, and I think that is the best option.
One that floated out last second that we didn't go with because it just was maybe too late was GAGP. For the Giesenschlag Goldsmith podcast. And I was like, ooh, I kind of liked that. But, the Power Stacks, the art, who are our great graphic artists put together. It's I don't know if you knew this, but Power Stacks also, it's part of building something within podcasts. I didn't even know that. So there you go. It's all there. But the content is going to carry it more than the name or the art. Those are great to go with it. But it's going to be great shows. Really excited about having it here. Please go support their show and listen. If you're a Reds fan, there it is. It's going to be a must listen for everybody every week. Well, we hope to be the same for you, and we've got some must listening for you to do right now. Let's talk about the news, Jay. What we got going on, the latest on Trey Hendrickson. So the latest is okay. We have reports out here from Jordan Schultz, right? I mean, who's trades off the table, and the Reds are the Reds. I've already switched over. I've been deep in Reds. The Bengals have been looking at getting the deal done now, and it's not going to be a trade. Let me just say this. Let me say this to start off, okay? I don't know that I have it in me to keep riding the days of our lives roller coaster here, okay? I don't think that everyone should be believing 100% of what they hear out there right now. I think what's happening right now is very much behind closed doors. And I don't know that anything can be said definitively in the media. I think they are trying to do and have done a decent job of buttoning it up. And I hear that. I'm not doubting the reporting. Okay. I'm not here to do that. I'm just saying, I think keep some perspective on the up and down roller coaster that this has been going on as we've gone through, and know that I think 100% is probably the wrong number to be using with anything at this point with the Bengals and Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it feels like right now, that it's off the table, but we say it all the time. Deadlines make deals. Weird things happen. The next deadline is draft night, and weird things happen on draft night, and there something comes up there. Bengals have a chance to move up and trade Trey Hendrickson, get a move up, a pick, whatever. Things can happen, but it does feel like with their inattention to the position in free agency, that they right now at this point they are all in on Trey Hendrickson playing for them this year, and it's just a matter of figuring out what his salary is going to be.
Yeah, and I think they've wanted that. I mean, and that hasn't been anything that they haven't said. I mean, you go back to Duke at the Combine or before. I mean, they want Trey Hendrickson to be a part of this team. They want to give him more money. They want to find a number that works. Now, that's complicated and easier said than done, but that's what they've wanted. And I so it's not really news to say that they still want that, because I think that they do. But I don't, as far as what's going to happen next, I just don't think it's definitive or timely.
No.
I think it's gonna be hanging out there for a little bit right now as they try to figure out and work out the details of what it looks like. Any trade, as we've said, the trade off the table, any trade, we've been saying this now for a little bit, would have to involve a player coming back just by the nature of everything that happened in free agency. So keep it in mind, if you're talking about anything happening, it would have to come from a player that would be willing to give somebody up, like the Colts, who were rumored early on. Like, you'd have to be getting a quiddy pay. You'd have to, if the Eagles really are hanging Bryce Huff out there, you'd have to have Bryce Huff involved in the deal. Just keep that in mind. Nobody thinks that the Bengals want anything other than try to get trade done, but the trade is insanely complicated, which is a big part of the reason why everyone probably is viewing that as something that is feeling a little off the table. But
yeah,
there's that. The Trey Hendrickson situation. We need like a soap opera sounder. We need to have the days of our lives. It just goes on and on every year, really. Every year. So, Lucas Patrick signed last week. We talked about him. I know Mark and I talked about him on Who Dey Light on Friday, but that was it. The move wasn't official at that point. I know there was some consternation out there about this signing of, is this really going to be the answer? And I think that's valid, valid frustration. Is this really the answer? But this is kind of where they're at with it. What did you think, Jay?
Yeah, I mean, it's low risk. The salary is low, and I almost look at it as more, yeah, he can get in there and get in the battle for guard and see what happens, but he's played center in the league too, and you really don't have a backup to Ted Karras. I mean, Matt Lee, 7th-round pick last year, that's who it would be if anything happened to Ted, you would think. So I think it's a nice insurance piece from that standpoint, and I don't know that he's an answer at guard, but he has starting experience in league, but he also has missed a lot of games the last few years, and he is over 30. So I don't think it's an answer, but it was a guy that was inexpensive, that checks a couple boxes for you, doesn't check the big box like day one automatic starter, but you needed more pieces. We've joked about the Royal Rumble. The more guys they can get in here and make that competition stiffer, the better they're going to be.
Yeah. And it's a competition right now. And, the draft is going to supplement one more member, if not two, into that competition. And that's what it's going to be. That's what it is, folks. Like, this is it. That doesn't make people happy. I know it's not the bigger swing that you would have liked to have seen them make. That ship has sailed. This was part of the answer. So you're going to have Cody Ford. You're going to have Lucas Patrick. You're going to have Jackson Kirkland. You're going to have a draft pick, probably a fairly prominent one. And this is going to be where it lands. They also need tackle depth. They don't have the swing tackle yet. There's guys out there to try to facilitate that. So maybe that's a direction that you could see happen as time goes by here. But that's also a hole on the offensive line in terms of depth of what you can do. Cody Ford, is he that? He can be, right? You like your versatility in these guys, but you also need OT3, I think, to feel a little more solid at this point, especially if those other guys are going to be counted on to play guard. You got to build that depth out. So that's where they're at.
You didn't mention Cordell Volson.
Sorry.
Okay.
No, that was my fault.
I didn't know if you were
his name. Yeah, he's in the
saying
mix.
That ship has sailed, and I do. I think with the new coaching staff, you still the amount of time he's played in the league, I think there's still time for a guy like that to make improvement. So I do. I think he's in that mix as well.
Yeah, and Scott Peters said as much. I mean, that was one of the biggest takeaways of the conversation with him at the Combine, was his belief that he thinks he can help get Cordell Volson to where he needs to get. And so much the same way pressure has been on Al Golden, that is just really strong right now. The same pressure's on Scott Peters, not just getting more out of what they already have, but he's going to have to do what the Bengals have not been able to do for about a decade. And that is probably find a day 2 guard or day 3. They just haven't had success there. They have so many other teams in the league have been able to dip into that spot in the draft and find answers, find serviceable, right? The Bengals have not. they have just failed at it, and they've not been able to make anything happen there. And so this will be the latest opportunity, and maybe Scott Peters can help be part of the answer there. They are certainly hoping that he is. Other free agents, what could come next? I think, linebacker is still hanging out there. So I think you could see a dabble at linebacker. But outside of that, I don't, and nothing there is going to really move the needle for you. I mean, it's grim, it's just, it is. You're not, you're going to be comparing guys to Oren Burks. You're going to be comparing guys to round 3 rookie or whatever. And otherwise, that's what it is. You're inevitably probably going to end up with another guy that's not going to move the needle, Oren Burks, and a draft pick playing next to Logan Wilson. So that's what it is. Yeah. And they're going to count on Al Golden to get the most out of it. It's a tough scene there. So maybe one more name, but I don't think it's there's nobody that's out there right now, unless, I don't know, Jay, do you see it differently? I don't see anybody out there where I'm like, well, Oren Burks is a backup.
No, I at linebacker, I do not. And in defense overall, I know there's a couple names out there at safety. I don't think they're the answer, but I personally would love to see Justin Simmons, because I want to see Charlie chug a beer. I don't care about the Bengals defense. I want my own satisfaction to watch Charlie chug a beer, which he promised to do on Who Day night. But I mean, Simmons, you look, Justin Simmons and Julian Blackmon are 2 safeties with a lot of starting experience in the league that are still out there. They're basically Geno Stone. I mean, Julian Blackmon, PFF, number 23 in coverage, number 148 in run defense. Justin Simmons, 85 in coverage, number 149 in run defense. I think that the safety addition is going to come in the draft for somebody to compete with Geno Stone.
I think.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to switch to another position. So if you got
here,
something else,
my one safety thought before that is that I think you can see their plan here, right? It's okay. We're going to keep Geno Stone around. Yep. We're going to draft somebody to be in competition with him immediately. We're going to hope. Now, that may be in the first round. They don't have to. It does give them a little flexibility, because Geno Stone can be your starter, and they can say, we're going to work with that. They can also, if it's Nicky Manwari at 17 and they're like, we love this guy, draft him. He's probably starting over Geno Stone, and you can play 3 safety stuff. You can feel like you have a good backup, whatever, competition. That's fine. And then the rest of it fills. But there's going to be a draft pick to come in and probably compete with Geno Stone, and maybe Geno ends up being the starter. Maybe he doesn't. You probably hope that he ends up taking over that job, the rookie, by the end of the season. And maybe it pushes Geno Stone to be better. Either way, it feels like that's the plan. It's battle, Stone, rookie, Stone versus rookie, Tyson Anderson, Dejon Anthony, I guess, in the background too there. That feels like the room right now. Right. It's just a matter of how good is that rookie is the only question left, depending on when they decide to take that bite at the safety position in the draft.
And the problem with that is that everybody saw it last year. Like, Geno Stone's big issue is tackling, and you just, there's no tackling in training camp and off season. And so that it gets a little tougher to gauge, but it wasn't just the tackling with Geno, it was the angles too, the poor angles that he took in the pursuit. So that's where I think it's really going to play out when you get into training camp and practice and see, does this, whoever this first or second round safety they draft, or, third, whatever it is, does he look like a dude? Does he look like a guy that can beat out Geno Stone and look like a better option? After safety, at guard, I know they signed Lucas Patrick. The one that really intrigues me that's still out there is Will Hernandez. And he was number 22 blocking guard last year. Now, he only played 5 games, and then he tore his ACL. There's no reason to sign a guy like that right now. You don't know, what's going to happen with the rehab. But he's a guy that I could see, if he's still sitting out there before camp starts and the rehab is on schedule and it's looking like he's getting closer, I could see them, or maybe another team beats him to it. But he's a guy that I could see taking a flyer on. He's going to be 30 in September, but a lot of these other guards that we thought could be fits, the Zeitlers and the Sheriffs and all those, that they're up over 30. So I would think he would come very inexpensive, especially you get past the draft and one of those early July, mid-July signings, and bring him into camp and see where he's at.
Yeah, Sheriff being the big one hanging out there of what ends up happening with his future in terms of if he keeps playing or wants to go somewhere else or whatever. That's kind of everyone is kind of waiting on that, Bengals included. So we'll see where that goes. All right. On that note, it's a great time. And that's time to bring in our good friends, the Growl Gals. All right, it is now that time to bring in our great friends, the Growl Gals. Kelsey Kendrick, Karey Matteucci of Bar 3 and Mariemont are here with us. How's it going?
Great. Spring break week, getting into that spring season. Things are starting to look alive over here.
Spring break, everybody's trying to figure out what to do with their kids. You know, if you need to get your workout in and you have your kids on spring break, you know what you can do? Go to Bar 3 because you guys have a place for the kids to hang out on the side. I mean, we're just solutions here, just
That's
givers.
right.
We give solutions to people.
Oriented, you get a whole hour that your kids have someone else taking care of them, and you're not. And they're entertained, and you didn't have to plan anything.
I mean, you talk about increasing mindfulness and happiness. An hour kid free, that alone, and someone else taking care of them for me. What else do you need?
It's basically like a little spring break within your spring break. And then you can just hop over to 50 West, go play in the sand. You're at the beach.
It's beautiful.
Exactly.
What else do you guys have going on during spring break down there?
Well, we've got a lot of people who travel. So, you know, they are hopefully doing some fun movement on their travels. But the nice thing about being a Bar 3 member is that you also get access to bar3.com, where you can access thousands of workout videos that range from 10 minutes to 60 minutes. So even if you're traveling and you have minimal props and you just want to get some movement in, you can just log on and pick what you're most interested in and get some of that same self-care that you would get in the studio, but wherever you are.
Yeah, they're great.
All right, now is that time. Tell me, what is your question for me this week?
Okay, so here's our question. So we've been talking a lot about offense. We're feeling really good about the offense. And I've heard a lot of chatter, or read a lot of chatter, I guess, about concerns about the defense. I've seen some funny comments online. One was like that the Bearcats are going to have to play both on Saturdays and Sundays now because we're not going to be able to afford a defense.
Oh, no. That'd be very bad.
It'd be very bad. So my question to you is, can you help us understand the defense, the defensive positions? And because we're going to have kind of limited money in the cap this year going into it, what are going to be some specific things that the Bengals are going to be looking for to kind of piece together a defense that we're going to feel confident in as we go forward and like build that part of the team up?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be looking for, they need pass rushers. I mean, they need somebody who can go and rush the passer, theoretically, besides Trey Hendrickson. That's going to be the biggest thing that they need to go out there and add right now. They need to add like a linebacker who, I know this sounds basic, but is like just not going to miss a lot of tackles. They just like missed way too many tackles or take poor angles in the wrong spots. Somebody who can go in there and run Al Golden's system and just be in the right place and make tackles, and be solid. You know, right now that's what it's about. Solid. Just be, no one thinks that they're going to go out there and suddenly snap their fingers and have the best defense ever and be running all over the field. I mean, they just need guys up front on the line that can win when they're one-on-one with the guy in front of them and get to the quarterback quickly. They just didn't have anywhere near enough of that last year besides Trey Hendrickson. And behind them at linebacker, they just need people that know how to know where they're supposed to be and can make the tackle, because too often that was just not the case last year. And so that's the front seven is really going to be the biggest part. That's where it's at.
So you're saying you're not even thinking like they don't need a ton of really superstars. It's not a huge concern. We just need like solid, consistent, reliable players.
It'd be great if they drafted a player and he became a superstar, because that's what's going to happen. They're going to have a cheap defense of a bunch of guys on rookie deals that play great. And that happens. It's happened across the league. The Eagles are a great example of that. They had tons of players on rookie deals that just were young and they played great and they played together and they won the Super Bowl. They had a great defense.
Mm-hmm.
The Rams kind of did the same thing and started kind of turning their defense around quickly last year. It was the lowest paid defense in all of the NFL, but it was really good and they made the playoffs. That's what it has to look like. And so you're just going to have a bunch of guys on rookie contracts, players are going to draft this year, do the right thing, hope that they're fast and athletic, and that's enough.
So I feel that the Bengals have drafted well offensively.
Mm-hmm.
How can they kind of steal some of that juju into the defense? Like, is there a big difference between drafting offensive players versus drafting defensive players?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest difference is going to be that Al Golden as a new coordinator that's his specialty. And I think the thought was that the guys they were putting in there before, they weren't quite developing. And so where Lou Anarumo is more of the like exotic defense, like kind of the mad scientist label, Al Golden is more developing young players is his number one signature thing. And so that's what they're going to lean into with him, is to be able to go in there and hopefully get some of these young players to play better. Because it's one thing to take, everybody agrees who the good guys are. It's whoever can bring them in and help them become the best version of themselves, right? Which is like what happens when people come into your place, right?
That's right.
I know I need to work out. I can go work out anywhere, but I need to go work out somewhere where I can become the best version of myself.
Yeah,
For sure.
that's helpful. Do you think that the culture will help? Like that you talked yesterday about how excited you are about the culture now being like looking better. Do you think the culture helps promote that if you have like all these rookies coming in, that if you have a good culture that helps build that program?
Yeah. And I think defensively, like a bunch of young guys kind of coming up together can become a more powerful thing. You know, they can kind of work together. Whereas if you have like a bunch of older guys and some young, you know, it feels very broken. But if you have everybody's kind of rising together and trying to prove themselves together, it can create something special.
We often like to encourage, honestly, new people who are coming into the studio to bring friends and family members who will also be new with them for that exact reason. Yeah. It really does help with like reliability, dependability. It's not easy being new. And so to have that confidence of like having other people around you who are also new and learning can be really powerful.
Yeah. And it just helps with that teamwork dynamic.
For sure.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, that is what's happening down at Bar 3 in Mariemont. So bring your friends and family and be a part of it. It is an awesome place. And so make sure you go down there, mention the Growler. You get a special discount on a 2-week unlimited package. You know you want that. Your first class is free for new clients, so no code required or anything. Contact Kelsey and Karey, DM on Instagram, Bar3 Mariemont, or you can email mariemont@bar3.com. Make sure you hit up our QR code down here. Oh, it's over there. I'll point over that way. Hit up our QR code down there. You can go right to their site from there and check out all the great stuff that they offer. Appreciate it. Good to talk to the Growl Gals as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Paul.
See ya.
All right, always great to hear from the Growl Gals who are bringing it with these questions, Jay. I'm telling you, this is these are the important questions that people need to know. I liked the we had arm length talk last week, talking about some of the things that we do. We don't always get into some of the basics of the arm length and really important defense stuff today. So Growl Gals are bringing it. I'm loving it.
Yeah, we have diehard listeners, but then we also have casual listeners. And then sometimes the casual listeners have the same kind of questions. And sometimes we do get a little deep in on some of these topics. And it's good to take a broader brush at some of these things.
You know what? You don't always cater to the sickos. We love the sickos. Yeah. Okay. Like, I'm here for you, but you shouldn't. There's really no part of anyone's life where you should spend all your time catering to sickos. Okay. Yeah. But we love you. We love all of the Growl Pals and the Growl Gals that are out there. All right. But speaking of sickos, there's been a lot of people that have just been clicking endlessly on Spotrac.com to see details on the Tee Higgins and Jamar Chase contracts. And I know this is along the same lines where we were just talking about more casual listeners. I wanted to try to take a view of the Chase and Higgins contracts that are out there now and sum it up in more in layman's terms to just kind of, here's the basics of it. Here's what you need to know. Here's what it is practically and the interesting things about it. And who else better to go to than the guy who runs Spotrac, Michael Ginnitti, who's awesome and has to be exhausted and low on sleep this time of year, trying to put all these contracts into his system as they keep feeding the beast that is out there on this stuff. So I did just that. So let's dive in with Michael Ginnitti of Spotrac, and we're going to talk to him about Jamar Chase, about Tee Higgins contracts and about the potentially of what a Trey Hendrickson contract could look like.
Now we're going to take a minute here on the program. We need to do this. Okay. We need to take a break from everybody screaming and yelling about incentives and bonuses and cap hits and let's get down to the basics of the deals with Tee Higgins and Ja'Marr Chase. And I thought there's no better way to do that than to bring in the guy who is running and filling in the blanks on the website that you are refreshing and clicking constantly over the last few months. And that is Michael Ginnitti, co-founder, editor, Spotrac. First of all, thank you for all you do for all of us reporters out here, because we rely on you so heavily this time of year to help us get a better view of balance sheets and cap hits and everything else. Let's start with this. First of all, congratulations. I went back and read, I think it was back in February. You basically nailed the Tee Higgins contract, it felt like. I mean, you kind of predicted exactly where it would land, and it did. What was your first takeaway on the Tee contract when you saw it come down?
Yeah, the money was talking, right? This is exactly what the math was saying it was supposed to be even a year and a half ago. You know what I mean? Even after a pretty productive 2024 on the tag, he just mathematically, he just wasn't a $30 million wide receiver. And when you make him a 1-2 punch with Chase, like they've done here, that even suppressed things more. So to me, Tee Higgins' number was really rock solid in terms of value and fairness. And, I understand what he's doing here in terms of taking a 2-year guarantee and allowing himself to maybe test the waters again after that. But yeah, this is about as market value fair as you can get this late in the game, right? Because this wasn't an early extension. This is as late as it can be. And we've seen these go haywire in San Francisco and Dallas the last couple of off seasons. So it's a good, fair contract for Cincinnati. And I think probably right around max volume for Tee Higgins right now.
So essentially, in the most basic of terms here, it's in practicality, it's a 2-year deal for about $59 million. That in 25 and 26, and then see where you're at. Right, there'd be a $7.5 million dead cap, which we know matters in Cincinnati. I know it doesn't matter anywhere else, but they care about it here. And so that's probably a significant number in their eyes, but still, that's when you talk about the compromise, the handshake in the middle with these two that are worried about injuries and the other side that knows what he deserves. That makes sense. How is that pretty common? That kind of the structure look fairly common to you there?
It does. And, not to get too deep down the rabbit hole here, but the Bengals did break structure here for these Ja'Marr Chase and Tee Higgins contracts. They did guarantee, not only roster bonuses, but future roster bonuses in terms of both contracts. So there's a little bit of a precedence reset that they've only done with Joe Burrow in the past. So, that's the team compromise. And then from the player compromise, yeah, I'm happy with 2 for nearly 60. If I'm Tee Higgins over the next couple of years, I'll be 27 and change going on 28 years old. If the wheels fall off with this relationship, then I'll have a really good chance at the open market to even maximize more from there. So yeah, a little bit of a handshake either way, but I think both sides are pretty happy right now for the next couple of seasons.
A talking point here is that they could have done more with the cap to give themselves more space to win now. How do you view that? Is that the case?
No question. The cap was never an issue for me with this team. Heading into February, I think they were estimated around 65 million with a couple of those early releases. But you can understand what's being said, right? Now that these 3 players are locked in for 2-3 years guaranteed, you've got to continue to fill up this cabinet, this cupboard. So you want to be able to maximize cap space. Well, with Higgins' contract specifically, there's not the 5th-year void year that we see on 95% of these extensions. So they did suppress the salary cap into 4 seasons instead of 5. That may change. It could change. But, an extension that only frees up around 1.5 million is sort of rare. Generally speaking, extensions are done for a lot of reasons, but one of them is to open up a significant amount of cap space in the current season. And that wasn't the case with Higgins. It was about front loading this for cash purposes to make him happy, to make him sign this contract. And they'll figure out the salary cap portion of things elsewhere. But certainly Chase's contract helped in that regard as well.
Perfect segue. Let's talk about Chase's contract. I mean, we knew it would be huge. We knew it would happen. There was, a bit of a template out there when you look at Jefferson and then Myles Garrett. What was your takeaway at that one?
Yeah, there was no turning back on this, right? There's no point of return in terms of not being able to max him out. This was going to be every big number we could get. Top guarantees, total value at 112, second guarantee at signing, which is a big deal for Cincinnati. That's usually the number that falls behind a little bit. But it's second only to Justin Jefferson. It's the top 2-year cash, the top 3-year cash, obviously the top average salary. Those were kind of no-brainers with this Chase contract. Just to give a couple of quick structure scenarios here, they did go with a couple of option bonuses. They did add void years, so this is very precedent setting in terms of a non-quarterback for the Bengals, in historically speaking. But from a cap purpose, if we want to get back to that, Paul, both of these contracts have interesting factors that there are multiple roster bonuses built in here, and when you guarantee them, you can prorate them like a signing bonus, so you can save yourself some salary cap by taking those roster bonuses and making them a signing bonus. In both cases with these contracts, they did a proration on one bonus, but not on another bonus, which front loads some of that cap into 2025. So when you're seeing $21 and $23 million cap hits for Higgins and Chase respectively, those are higher than we're going to see on a lot of these other contract extensions, even Sam Darnold and Cooper Kupp and all these ones that are, somewhat relevant to these conversations. So they did front load some of this salary cap with these contracts, along with the cash for sure, possibly to preserve 2026 space, possibly to understand that they want to be able to get out of this cleaner. And you obviously know the dead cap situation pretty well. That's part of it. That's part of it too. So those are really interesting wrinkles with these contracts that we don't see with any other team and any other big time extensions going forward.
Chase has kind of the potential out of 4 years, 138. But at that point, I mean, they're in the Jamar Chase business. This wasn't made to care about outs or anything like that. They want to be in the Jamar Chase business. And I think this probably reflects that. There's, incentives, bonuses. I know Tees is really interesting in that regard, where there's a 60, you can see them hedging against the playtime issue that he's had. 65% of the snaps in an AFC Championship game, part of this too. Is that rare? I mean, teams building in for like, look, you have an injury history. Can we build something in for that?
Yeah, I think the playoff bonuses are sort of like a nice add-on, a nice little tack on, just to add a couple of million as needed. The Higgins number that stands out, and by the way, it's a trend this offseason, especially with teams like New England and San Francisco. The per game bonuses of $2 million a year are very excessively high. We're seeing them get as high as $3.1 million for some players in a single season. That's injury protection, right? So it's dollars he can make if he's healthy and dollars he won't make if he's not healthy. We've seen that quite a bit, but these are big numbers, and that's certainly covering up a red flag with Tee Higgins' first couple of seasons in the league. And that's, by the way, that's additional cap savings if they can get it over the next couple of years, if he misses time for injury and things like that.
As far as, everyone says that every place I go, every interview I do, we talk about T, and then we talk about Jamar, and then we have to answer the question about Trey Hendrickson. What do you think a Trey Hendrickson situation looks like going forward here? The Danielle Hunter, what role did that play, and where do you view what has to happen to make both sides happy here?
Yeah, we're probably 3 years removed from players of this age, despite the production, right? Despite the fanfare and the all-pro honors and everything, just trending more towards a minimum contract than $30 million a year. But that's changed rapidly with these plug-and-play players that are really taking contenders to the next level, which is certainly something Hendrickson could do. You know what I mean? If he was in a situation that was even more elevated than Cincinnati. So it's not a conversation of suppressing his value. It's just, will Cincinnati meet the level of money that, right, Danielle Hunter, Von Miller in Buffalo a couple of years ago, and on Myles Garrett, certainly those numbers have gone up with a near 30-year-old. So it's $30 million, right? I mean, Danielle Hunter just redid a contract after one season with production that was slightly less than what Hendrickson has done over the past couple of years in Cincinnati. So it's that $29 million mark that Tee Higgins just secured. That might be the model to carry over to a Trey Hendrickson contract, especially with a 2-year guarantee. So it's, like I said, this isn't a conversation we're having 3 years ago, but it's probably one they can't get out of in Cincinnati right now. outside of the fact that can you go and replace him in the draft? And I think they're realizing that's probably not the case going forward.
Yep. Mike, I really appreciate it. And thank you again for like everything that you guys do over there. I know it's exhaustive and you track all these numbers down, and so fans can have a better feel for what their teams are doing and roster build. And I know I certainly appreciate it. So thank you for that. Thank you for your time. I feel much smarter now, and I have a better handle on everything that has happened here, and hopefully listeners do as well. So thanks for your time, Mike. Appreciate it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Much thanks again to Mike Ginnitti from Spotrac, who helped kind of all of us, I think, understand a little bit better some of the basics of what it really means. Jay, what were your takeaways from hearing what Mike had to say there?
Yeah, just what he said, and we've kind of seen it over the years where the Bengals do things a certain way, and they just do them the way they do them, and that's starting to change. And the use of void years, something that they've never participated in. It's not going to be a franchise that's just going to overnight turn into the Eagles and do things that way. But I think it's significant. What you hear him talking about is they started it with Joe, and now the 2-year guarantees, the use of void years. It's kind of dipping the toe into kind of this new philosophy. And if this goes well, and not just talking about winning titles, but if this contract plays out for them the way that they are hoping it will, you can maybe see them doing more of this. And if it doesn't, then you could see them reverting back to, that's the reason we always did it that way, and that's the reason we don't like to do these things. So I think that's the significant part of this, is you see that gradual, I don't know, updating or evolution of their thought process on how to do these things.
I think that, I found it interesting that Mike was talking about how one contract handled things differently than the other contract did. And I think that was them drawing a line and saying, like, if you are an unimpeachably great player, you have no negatives that we see here, we can do special things for you like we did for Burrow. If you're Jamar Chase, we can do that. If you played 54% of the snaps the last 2 seasons, we're not going to do that for you. If there's a ding there. Now, and I thought that was interesting, talking about the rare nature, how 95% of deals do have a little more cap relief in the top, and that's certainly apparent, and that's definitely a part of this. But I think you can see the compromise with T there of, you're not Jamar, but we'll give you a bunch of cash up front, and we'll turn this into 2 years, 60, and we'll just set up some stuff where you can make more if you do play. If you overcome that ding on you for missing snaps and all that stuff, if you overcome that, if you hit 65%, if you win playoff runs and all the stuff that was in there, all the per game bonuses, like he was saying, how big they are, you do that, you'll get more. And that's where you can see where they met in the middle with some of that. And, and I think the fact that it's 2 years, 59, and we'll see is really one of the easiest takeaways from this. That's just surface based, throw away all the other stuff. Think of it that way.
Yeah, and 2 things with the roster, the per game bonuses. You wonder what happens if there is a little bit of an injury, and T's like, I'm good to go, I can play, I want that money, and the team's like, we want you, we don't want this to turn into something longer, and there can be that little bit of headbutting there too, whether he's active on a given day. And then the other thing is you mentioned it, and that's what a lot of people have been talking about, is not clearing immediate cap space and with the way these were structured. And it's kind of a chicken and egg argument, where did they do it that way because it took them so long to get it done? They're like, we don't need to clear cap space, everybody's gone, there's no one left to shop for here that's going to make a difference. Whereas if they had gotten this done before free agency started, would they have made it look a little different and worked more to clear that cap space, knowing that they could have taken a run at some of these guys? Was it a well thought out plan ahead of time, or was it reactionary because it took them so long and they missed the boat on free agency?
Very few people know the answer to that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I know.
There was a lot to figure out as far as what happened there. But either way, I think you can look at this and say, I don't think it's planless. I think that they wanted to feel like they were both giving and taking here, and that was being able to just give what they wanted now, and then having space to do things like that they believe will have to be the next round of these with their guys. I mean, we talked about last week, who's next? Who could be the next? Well, you have to think, you have to believe defensively that they think some of these young players are going to start coming to their own, and some of them are going to be extension eligible, and they're going to feel like they're going to have to pay them, or if they don't, they're going to have to go into free agency next year to fix some major problems. They can make this bet now on the young defense, but they need to be thinking about it into the future a little bit more. And I'm sure, again, all of this stuff is more complicated. We're trying to keep it a little more surface here, just so you guys can understand the basics of what matters. What matters now is they're here. They had the room. They used the room. They found the injury compromise with T, and they gave everything and broke precedent with Jamar specifically. And that's kind of a lot of things that were questions of whether they would do, if they would be able to find resolution on all of those. And they did. And kudos to them and everybody there on getting it done. And now they can go and enjoy that. Let's flip forward, though, to the draft quickly. I don't want us to have any episodes right now that don't have some draft talk, because we're getting deep into that. We did some of that with Steve the other day. I know we've had a lot that we've kind of got to in today's episode, but let's do a little bit of just kind of, whether we're talking about big boards, mock drafts, all that stuff out there. I have another one coming out. Everybody's doing those, of course. And I think the big board, is coming more into focus. I know we need to have James on, because him and I need to spar over him believing that you would do something like take Ashton Ginnitti if he was there at 17. I'm fine. I love that he wants all the smoke, and James is he's about it, right? I'm here for it. But I'd love to, I feel like we need to have conversations about that. But either way, I think you can pinpoint, because their needs are so heavy, and it does meet the draft at places where there's plenty. It's not like you're looking at it and you're like, who's it going to be? I think there's a group. You've kind of thrown together a good consensus big board group here, right?
Yeah. So what I kind of looked at the 10 guys that I think are most likely to be who they would pick from at 17. And they're listed over here at the left. And then at the top, I looked at some of the more prominent mock drafts and where they had these guys being taken, and who the 17 there in orange, that's who they had the Bengals taking. And, there's a little bit of consensus there too. And then there's some outliers at the bottom with Will Johnson and Michael Williams and Jalen Walker. But
let's run through those names. Let's run through those names real quick.
Yeah, that's true, because not everybody's watching this. So my main core of guys is Tyler Booker, the guard from Alabama, Jihad Campbell, the linebacker from Alabama, Shamar Stewart, the edge from Texas A&M, Mike Green, the edge from Marshall, who you took in the athletic beat writer mock, Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle from Oregon. I'm going to get caught up on some of these names here.
Nick Emanwari,
the safety from South Carolina, Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle from Ole Miss, Donovan, you got the pronunciation on that one?
Ezraku.
Mm-hmm. The edge from Boston College, Malachi Starks, the safety from Georgia, and James Pierce, the edge from Tennessee. All of those guys, except Jihad Campbell, didn't make the first round in at least one draft of the ones that I looked at. And Jihad Campbell is really strange too. He is as consistent as you will ever see as far as a consensus on where a guy is probably going to go in the draft. He's 18, 19, 19, 19, 19, 15, 19, 30, 14, and 9. So everybody kind of sees him being available when the Bengals pick. Would they go linebacker in the first round? I don't know, but those are the positions I feel that are in play: guard, linebacker, safety, and then D-line, whether it's D tackle or edge. And it feels like that's the core group, that pick at 17 is going to come from one of these guys.
Yeah. And they're all interesting in their own right. I mean, because otherwise they'd be so many of these guys would be top 10 if they didn't have one little thing, right? You had the terrible workout from Tyler Booker at Alabama, and now there's like, is he going to be a second round guy? Where you don't know, where he was previously projected much higher. You have whatever off the field is happening with James Pierce. There's lots of talk about that. obviously off the field as part of the conversation with Mike Green. He just had an incredible workout at his pro day at Marshall. I mean, freak show stuff. Getting people mentioning the name Khalil Mack when talking about comps. I've seen that a couple of times where you look at his 3-cone at 6.85 is just stupid for the edge rush. And that's a very predictive number with edge rushers, and certainly something that could make sense. And you could see being an answer for the Bengals. But and then the safety, are you going to value safety at 17? Would you value guard at 17?
Yeah.
I mean, these are the questions with all of these guys. And so you're trying to find the one impeachable, Shamar Stewart, for as an athletic off the charts as he is, right? You're looking where was some production was missing, right? You got everybody here has a little something, and you just got to kind of figure out where you land. But yeah, you're right. I mean, this is a pretty clear grouping of a lot of those guys that are currently projected to be in that mix.
Yeah, and I misspoke. Mike Green also is he is a first round pick on all 10 of these drafts. So and some of these drafts, like the one from Dane, was done March 4th. That was before the bad workout from Booker. He had him as a top 10 guy before that. So a lot of this kind of plays into the fact too of when these drafts were put together. But I expect it to be. I'd be surprised if it's not one of these 10 guys. But things do happen. Maybe they trade back, and then you're looking at a whole different realm of players, or maybe there's another something else in play where something happens with Trey Hendrickson. But I do feel pretty good about this core 10.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we're going to spend a lot of time talking about these guys, debating position, the position of premium positions when you're drafting. We're going to be spending a lot of time talking about all that stuff because there's a decent group here where you got to figure out something that Duke Tobin said to us at the Combine. You got to figure out what you're willing to accept, and you shouldn't be feeling like you're having to accept many things that matter to you at 17 overall. I see a lot of talk about people saying, oh, well, if you have all of these guys that feel kind of the same, move back. That sounds great. And in theory, it's a fun thing to talk about. It makes sense for the Bengals. They would be loving it if they could probably pull that off. Who's coming up? And that's kind of the question you got to ask. It takes two. And it feels like you've got to find somebody that's willing to come up and has something that they want. And I don't know that there's going to be anything in this spot that people want. You never know. Teams get itchy about things, and it could be anything. But it feels like this is the type of draft where it's going to be much harder to move back from 17 than you'd like it to be if that was what you wanted to do. But yeah, we'll spend a ton of time diving into these names, and it's good to see the consensus board out there. The safety dynamic is really interesting to me because, one, what happened with Dax Hill is fresh in everyone's memory, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't take a safety in round one. It's just find good players, and these guys are great, but how much does that matter compared to the fact that they just couldn't get after the passer? And they brought Eamon in for a top 30. We know what that means. If you're someone that's projected to go in their space and you Bengals bring him in for a top 30, he is in the mix. That's where they pick from every year. And so that clearly shows value in the position. And between Starks, we'll keep an eye on other guys that are coming in. I would think a guard that you were taking there would also have to have tackle versatility. Maybe one of these guys that are near the top that play tackle and can push inside the guard, because you'd want him to cover two bases there, to be your third tackle for now, potentially be your tackle answer in the long run if you can't keep Orlando Brown. All of those things, and play guard now. You would need both of those probably to make that pick at 17.
Yeah, and you mentioned the guard. It's interesting that Zabel from North Dakota State, do they go that route again? Do they go to a North Dakota State guard? But he's starting to sneak up into spots on some mocks before the Bengals pick at 17. And it initially looked like he was probably a second round guy, but who knows? Maybe he does come into play there. And that's again, it's the position value that they haven't done that a lot. Was Zeitler in 2012, last time they took a guard in the first round, but it's a need, and they've painted themselves into this corner, and I don't think anything's off the table where that's concerned.
I would agree. Yeah, they need a guard who is capable of winning that battle and feeling pretty good about the possibility they could win that battle, and we'll see who that is. It could be Tate Ratledge to come play next to Marius Mims again and get him in round 2 if you have to, and be like, look, I feel like it's an advantage for us. They've played next to each other. They know each other. And he looks really good. He's got a mullet. What's not to like? And say, hey, that's where we're going. That's what we're doing. And maybe that, and you can feel good about that in round 2, or maybe you take a more aggressive play. We shall see. But good. Thanks for putting the board together. Always good to take a look at that and get a feel for where things are at. Much deeper dives for the sickos coming your way as we continue trending towards the draft. We're less than 4 weeks, almost. We're like a month away here, so right around the corner. We should talk about the Growler bet.
Yeah.
The contest, the bracket.
Yeah.
What we end up at 930? That's 962.
938, I think it was.
938. That's a lot of brackets that got put in. Shout out to you guys, Growl Pals, for joining in the contest.
Shout out to you, but also curse to you, because I was really disappointed in the names. I thought it was going to be, you guys are so creative normally with the Growler bet subject headers, and I think a lot of people, they probably filled out a lot of brackets, a lot of pools, probably just a little fatigue there, and they're just so-and-so's name, and not. There were some interesting ones in there, and one of our leaders is Katie needs a new job. So there were some interesting ones. But yeah, it's a spirited competition, and I'm right there. I'm not going to win the prize because that wouldn't be fair, but I am in 5th place right now.
Wow.
And I have a second bracket. My Ghost of Valvano bracket is in 16th place. So the overall leaders, we have a 4-way tie at the top. Jared Hunt, Stephen Niekamp, Mark Talby, and Del Martin all have 550 points. They're 10 more than what I have, and a few others are tied with me at 5th. So it's close, and we've got those guys that are tied for first. One has Michigan State, one has Duke, one has Florida, and one has Auburn winning it all. So as most of these pools do, it's going to come down to, can you pick the overall champion? And then if you don't, but it doesn't matter how good you are through the first few rounds. If you don't pick the overall champ, you're not going to win.
Yes. I'm feeling like I've still got hope. I'm going to be riding Texas Tech and Auburn.
There you go.
And seeing if they can find a way to make it happen. So I'm hopeful. I'm not totally out of it. I'm not doing good. Like I'm not doing good.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle, right? But I feel like I've got hope. I liked my Texas Tech to the Final Four, to the champion. I feel like they could be the one, and they're probably, which only is a curse that they're definitely going to be losing this week, but that's okay. That's all I've got. So my dad's up there. My dad's up there in the top portion. I think he's like in the around 30 or so. He's trying to take the crown and see if he can get in there.
How'd your daughters do?
They're not doing super. So my daughter Rosie decided that she had two things, that her school, they're the Eagles, and so she wanted to pick all birds. So anytime there was a bird involved, she was in on, look, if it's a bird, going. Louisville, going. Right? Like Creighton, going. They're all about bird. There were some bird on bird games that were really challenging for her as well. She also loved the way Lipscomb was pronounced, which was unfortunate. So Lipscomb made a run to the Final Four, which would have been a hell of a story. But she thought it sounded like lipstick, and she thought that was funny. And so Lipscomb made a run. So their brackets aren't super. My oldest daughter was really interested in seeing some upsets, and as am I. And so I appreciate her loving that part of March Madness. But it wasn't great for a bracket where this year was very chalky.
I did find your dad's entry. He's in 69th place, which will delight Glenn Hammerly, our regular subject headers send in on the Growler bet. So
nice.
He's got Duke winning it at all, but so do a lot of other people. So he's going to need a lot of other things to happen before we get to that.
No doubt. Love it. All right. Let's see what else we got to get to. I think we can wrap this. We've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah.
What do you got an Arby's for me?
I do. So it kind of goes back to this, I just love the tournament. I've been running games since back in the 90s. And so there was, in 1996, the Cincinnati Post teamed up with 96 Rock for a contest where if you picked the Final Four correctly, you could win this amazing, it's not tickets to a concert. This was the most epic prize ever that I thought I was going to win. It was season tickets for the Reds, season tickets for the Bengals, season tickets for UC and Xavier. You win all that if you could pick the Final Four. Well, the deadline to enter wasn't until after the Sweet 16 was decided. So I filled out every single possible combination, and Mississippi State went to the Final Four. It was rare. It ended up only 2 people had the correct Final Four, and I did not win. And I was salty about it because they would give away prizes during the week. They would pick out just random entries and say your name on the radio. If you called in, you would win something minor. Well, they pulled my name out when I was out of town. I was in Columbus that day. There was no way I could listen to 96 Rock. This was before internet radio and everything. So I didn't call in. So I feel like they purposely didn't give. I was one of the 2 people that had the correct Final Four. And I think because I didn't call in when they called my name, they went with the other guy. And I was just crushed. That would have been an incredible prize.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of work.
Where would it rank amongst the 75 prizes that you've won on radio contests over the years? I mean, where would it rank? Would that be number 1?
Oh,
no
easy.
doubt.
Yeah, easy. I mean, season tickets to all of those, that would have been incredible. But
you have a track record. You've won a lot of great prizes over the years.
I have. But
it's unbelievable. It still is one of my favorite things about you, Jay. It's just how you have radio contests. It's kind of sad. Like a lot of them are going away. We don't see as many of them anymore. I don't feel like. I mean, you could tell me more than about that than anybody, but I feel like they're kind of going away a little bit, and that's a big part of your lifestyle. Like
I just like to win. And
who doesn't?
The season ticket giveaway yesterday with Stanio is like, I know I can't win, but I'm trying. People can't get through. Let's see if I can get through. And I kept calling, and I kept I wasn't going to enter. Obviously, I couldn't, but I was getting the voicemails. I couldn't get through either. It was the turnout for that was amazing, and I'm really excited to see who wins that prize.
Yeah. Is this the first server that the Growl Pals have crashed? Is this the first time we got? I mean, I don't know how many lines they had, but it sounded like they were just pouring in calls as he was giving away the Bengals season tickets with that number that he had given to us. And so I hope it turns out well for whatever Growl Pal ends up winning. But yeah, it sounded like we had them inundated at this point. It was, I think it might have been a little overwhelming, but shout out to Stanio for doing it and everybody at Keller Williams for doing it, because it's a really cool giveaway that they did. And so we'll get you updates as we get them on how that contest went and who the winner ends up being. All right. Let's get out of here. Reminder to everybody, if you're a baseball fan, it's opening day is tomorrow. If you're a Reds fan, listen to Power Stacks with Giesenschlag and Goldsmith. Because it's awesome. They have a season preview and their trailer, both up now. Follow. If you go in the show notes, you can get the links to those, and make sure you follow along, subscribe, all the stuff you guys do in supporting us. Because if you're a Reds fan, it's going to be a great way to start your week all season long, and what should be a pretty fascinating season for the local ball club. So we hope that you guys will follow, and you know how good Charlie is. So you're going to love it. All right. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you on Who Day Light. Have a good one.